Lucy Letby. Her attacks escalated. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As per Will Bolton, writing in the Telegraph, the headline reads, Letby's attacks escalated as she experimented with new methods for harming babies. Britain's worst child killer tried different techniques with some not easy to detect, said chief medical expert at her trial. Accordingly, the suggestion is that alternative methods of killing were utilized by Letby, and the nature of those attacks escalated. Let's find out more about what this suggestion is, and then utilize what we know about Letby to explain why this happened. Lucy Letby's attacks on babies escalated as she experimented with new methods for harming children, the chief medical expert at her trial has said. Dewey Evans said he believes that Britain's worst child killer used a number of different techniques throughout her 5-year career, some of which were almost impossible to detect. On Monday, the Crown Prosecution Service will announce whether it intends to bring a fresh trial against Letby relating to 6 outstanding attempted murder charges, which jurors were unable to reach a verdict on. Dr. Evans, a paediatrician, stated he believed that prior to the June 8, 2015, when Letby murdered her first known victim, baby A, the neonatal nurse's preferred method was to remove or displace breathing tubes. For so many breathing tubes to come out, and they can come out accidentally, but for so many to come out over such a short period of time in what I consider to be a good neonatal department, that is very concerning. That method is extremely hard to detect and prove. She changed her modus operandi over time. Dr. Evans said that following Letby's first arrest in 2018, he had been asked to review the notes of another 48 babies who were not part of the trial, and he identified possible concerns with 18. I identified several cases in 2014 where tubes became displaced. None of those babies died or suffered long-term harm as far as I am aware. However, among those 18, there is also one death by insulin poisoning. It wouldn't surprise me if she committed another insulin poisoning or two where doctors did not measure the insulin level after death. If you do not measure the insulin level, then you can't know whether there was foul play. There are, undoubtedly, more cases of insulin poisoning. Because these babies are so small, it is really not that difficult to get away with causing them harm if you mix your methods and the children are on their own. Letby was convicted last month of murdering 7 babies and attempting to murder 6 more at the Countess of Chester Hospital's neonatal unit. The 33-year-old became only the 3rd woman alive to be handed a whole life jail term. Closing their arguments in the final days of her 10-month trial, prosecutors mentioned a previously unheard detail to the court. 2 weeks before she murdered baby A, Letby went on a training course which allowed her to administer medicine via special cannulas. During the course, the potential dangers of air embolism was highlighted to her. From this point on, Dr. Evans said she began to inject air into her victims, and the number of deaths on the unit rose significantly. As far as I am aware, there were no air embolism deaths before she went on that course. It was after she discovered that method the deaths really increased, he said. According to CPS guidance, a decision on whether to seek a retrial will depend on the public interest. The guidance states that only cases involving significant public interest factors in favour of prosecution warrant a retrial. Earlier this month, Letby also formally lodged a bid to challenge her convictions at the Court of Appeal, see Part Passim. Typically, applications for permission to appeal against a Crown Court decision are considered by a judge without a hearing. If this is refused, people have the right to renew their bid for permission at a full court hearing before 2 or 3 judges. Thus, this medical expert suggests that Lucy Letby escalated the method of her attacks, shifting from the displacement of breathing tubes to the utilization of insulin poisoning and also the injection of air to cause an air embolism. What do we know of this suggestion in relation to what we know about Lucy Letby? Well, if you have not already watched my compelling series about her, I'd very much encourage you to do so. Not only is it an excellent example of a forensic breakdown of the behavior of a killer, it also enables you to understand why she behaved as she did and allows you to understand the categorization of Lucy Letby. It is a fantastic opportunity to increase your understanding. If you haven't watched it and you don't know what she is, I'd suggest you pause this video now as I'm about to repeat it, and therefore spoiler alert. I determined, after a very detailed consideration of the material, that she is a narcissist that has a sadistic streak and psychopathic tendencies. Having established that, we are now able to look at her behavior through the lens of her narcissism, and therefore, to address the suggestion that she escalated her attacks, why, if that suggestion is accurate, would that happen? There are 2 factors behind it. The first is that, remember, she needs control and to draw fuel. And it may well be the case that she wasn't getting the reaction that she wanted from the displacement of breathing tubes. Namely, it wasn't causing the outcome that was desired, i.e. the death of the children, with all of the associated consequences that would provide her with a subconscious sensation of control and also the provision of fuel. Therefore, her narcissism shifted her to choosing an alternative, escalated method of attack, namely insulin poisoning and or the injection of air to create an air embolism, because that would be more effective in causing death, which would then result in the consequences which provided her with the control and fuel that she so desperately needed. The second aspect relates to the fact that she has a sadistic streak and that she took enjoyment from causing pain to vulnerable babies. That her narcissism and her sadism combined to identify that rather than removing breathing tubes, which would cause suffocation, but instead that she would be able to cause a greater level of pain to these babies by the injection of insulin and air embolisms. And therefore, her sadism directed her to escalate these attacks instead. Thus, if this suggestion is accurate from this medical expert, the escalation of her attacks arose as a consequence of a shift of the modus operandi in the way that her narcissism was behaving, so that it was a better method of gaining control and fuel, and it also did it to satisfy her innate sadism. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.